welcome to Adventures in Knowledge, Episode 3. Today we are covering climate change again, this time the impacts and dangers with climate change as well as things that'll bring you hope. So let's get started on it. And I know I've gone over the topic of climate change quite a bit since this is the third episode of it, but it's an important topic and there was a lot to cover. I could have taken more episodes. I could have taken less, but just didn't do that. So let's get started. First of all, climate change has already caused a multitude of issues on the planet. One such issue is flooding. This is increased due to climate change. The way this has changed is due to ice glaciers melting, which leads obviously to rising oceans and more flooding. Deforestation also is an issue because it is causing weaker soil, which is allowing rainwater to flow freely and leading to landslides. The increased flooding can lead to deaths, property damage, and impact food growth, which obviously is a domino effect of issues that can occur. Some cities are experiencing flooding and ocean level rise, which threaten to sink their cities. Some cities have already sunk. One city at risk of sinking is Lagos, Nigeria, Africa's largest city. Houston, Texas is also a city at risk of sinking. This leaves the city at a higher risk of damage from hurricanes, as well as flooding and other issues. Venice, Italy is a very vulnerable city. It is built on water, it's an island city that could easily disappear if actions aren't taken to protect it. Luckily, the people of Venice have actually created a system. It costs billions of dollars, but it should help to prevent rising ocean from flooding them. So, it's not good, it's very expensive, but they are taking some action to protect themselves and prevent damage to their city. Venice, by the way, is a major place for tourism, and many people live there. Other cities are New Orleans, an epicenter of music and culture, as well as Rotterdam, Netherlands, Alexandria, Egypt, and Miami, Florida. Some ways this will impact people include lost revenue from decreased tourism, which can deeply impact the economies of many nations and cities. Another impact is without change, many people will be forced to relocate, and that's just going to be difficult for a lot of people. Some other effects from climate change are droughts. Deforestation is often a cause of this, since the trees in a forest help to capture water molecules from the air, as well as help in an evaporation and cooling process. As trees are destroyed, this process is impacted, and the water cycle releases its water in a different area than before, which causes flooding in areas that didn't usually have flooding, and a drought in an area where trees used to be. Drought can cause plants to perish and lead to deaths of animals and people from dehydration, starvation, and heat exhaustion. Also, I've had heat exhaustion twice. It's not fun. It also puts you at more risk of heat stroke, which is really dangerous. Really hope I never have that. You don't want those. We explained earlier how climate change has led to a warmer planet, but it also impacts weather phenomena such as blizzards and hurricanes. Climate change has increased both of these storms in strength and number. Hurricane intensity has increased because heat leads to more evaporation of water, and more water in the air leads to more rainfall, which makes hurricanes more powerful on average than they had been before. Higher sea levels are causing more storm surges, which could also be a cause of more storms. Recent sea level rise, 23 annual tide gauge records, 3-year average, and satellite altimetry. As you can see with this chart, ocean levels have been rising since the 1880s, around the time of the Industrial Revolution. Again, in case that point has not been clear in all 3 of my episodes. Definitely human caused. It doesn't seem like a lot. It's in centimeters, but those little changes over time can be extremely traumatic. Think about the cities that are at exactly sea level or below sea level. That has an impact, even the slightest change. Blizzards are also more intense for the same reason as hurricanes. More moisture in the air leads to greater snowfall and nastier storms. Scientists have been studying why we might be getting more blizzards in the eastern U.S. They think the warmer Arctic could be weakening jet streams, which are allowing colder air to go south. Some consequences of these hurricanes and blizzards are deaths, injuries, health problems, damaged property, loss of home, especially in hurricanes, and power outages. Recently, with Texas, the worst winter storm Texas has seen in 100 years. The reason that one was so bad, however, is due to infrastructure that wasn't kept up to date and wasn't winterized. Admittingly, Texas doesn't usually have winter weather, but they should have adapted because they knew they'd had bad storms in 2011 and everything. One city did. Power grids just weren't built for winter in Texas, and that leads to these problems. We can't keep denying that climate change is a problem. If we do, we end up with situations like Texas, where you don't adapt to the changing climate. It's important that we prevent climate from changing too far from where it already is, but it is already bad, so we have to prepare for the problems that already exist. Climate change is also and will continue to have an impact on food in the world. Many foods are impacted by the weather effects of climate change. They can delay when some plants can be planted. This delay impacts the income of farmers, leads to increased prices for fruits and vegetables, and even leads to food insecurity. Crops such as rice or corn, which are staples in people's diets, can have a major impact on food in the world. Individual cities, states, and nations could lose out on income from food loss. So, economic consequences, starvation consequences, health consequences, if we do not change this. Some foods which are most at risk, which people love or use often, include coffee, chocolate, corn, and rice. Fruits such as oranges are also at great risk. A prediction is that there will be a 35% yield reduction in crops by 2100 due to greenhouse emissions. Not only are the number of plants likely to reduce, but the quality can be reduced as well. Increased CO2 can cause some plants to produce more carbohydrates, but also reduce protein, mineral, and vitamin content. This means some foods will be in shorter supply, and others will simply be less nutritious. It has been found that in some plants, the percent of vitamin B is decreased when they were grown with more CO2, since the CO2 makes it harder for the plants to lose water, and in turn leads to a decrease in nitrogen intake, which affects the vitamin B in the plant. And not all food that's impacted are plants, and there are some plants that will thrive in this climate change. However, ones that are very important to the human diet and to many other species will be negatively impacted. Animals we eat are also impacted by climate change. The oceans absorb nearly 90% of the excess heat on the planet from climate change, and this leads to a change in the pH of the oceans. Warm waters increase the absorption of CO2, which increases the carbonic acid amount, which in turn lowers the pH. The carbon cycle explains this. The increased heat of the oceans cause many species of fish and other animals we eat to move to a new location in the ocean, which brings new challenges for fishers as well as the animals that have to compete with new ones for resources. The temperature can also affect fish metabolism, leading them to have more mercury in their systems. This is harmful to humans when we eat the fish and can affect the fish's health in and of themselves. More pathogens and diseases can impact these animals, making them less safe to consume. The increased acidity of the ocean makes it harder for shelled species to build up shells and skeletons because the amount of calcium carbonate in the ocean has decreased. Shelled species use calcium carbonate to help build up shells. Also, high acidity can dissolve shells. This leads these species to be vulnerable to predators and disease. This reduces the number of survivors in these species, which can impact the survival of the animals which eat them, causing a chain reaction and problem in the food chain. This impacts marine ecosystems. Land animals we eat are also impacted by climate change due to decreased food sources and dehydration or vulnerability due to changes in weather and temperature. Some meat humans consume may be harder to eat if populations of those animals decrease. Animals we don't eat will also be impacted. Species can lose habitat, such as rainforest species, birds or monkeys, spiders, important insects, and more. Animals are vulnerable to habitat loss due to human actions, drought, flooding, and storms. Climate change also impacts the food chain as stated before. If certain plants die off, the animals that eat them do too, and the animals who eat them do, and so on and so forth. This leads some species to eat things that aren't their usual prey as a means of survival to avoid starvation. This impacts other parts of the food chain and can also even endanger humans. Humans are not a usual target for sharks, despite what movies depict. However, shark attacks have risen. It is possible some of the increase is due to sharks losing their typical food source. On a side note that's very interesting, Peter Benchley, the creator of Jaws, felt super guilty about having accidentally given people misconceptions about sharks, so he spent his later years fighting against shark killings and created a charity that helps sharks in the wild. He was a good guy. Anyway, also random fact, cows kill more people than sharks. Usually because humans are being stupid and try to tip them over. Stuff like that. But cows do kill more people than sharks. Anyway, the biggest predator to humans is actually the hippopotamus. We think they're all cute and stuff. You see them in a zoo, but if you noticed, there's a big barrier, a big separation. They are actually the biggest danger to humans. Of all animals on the planet. Interesting, too, since species who usually have eyes in the front are usually predators and eyes towards the side are usually prey. Crocodiles, sorry, I had to think if it was crocodiles or alligators. Crocodiles, their eyes are a little more to the side, likely because of hippogriffs. Sorry, I was playing a Harry Potter game earlier. Hippopotamus. My bad. Hippo. I mean, it'd be interesting if it was a hippogriff too. But anyway, hippos. Hippos. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Side note. Now, climate change is not directly the cause of some of these species issues, but the consequences of climate change have further secondary consequences as well. The massive fires in Australia were due to climate change, leading to harsher droughts. This has dramatically reduced the number of koalas on the planet, as well as other animals. Other massive wildfires have occurred as well. Many species are endangered or critically endangered due to climate change. As we've seen, California has had so many fires in the last few years. Climate change is the leading part of that. Plants have also been greatly impacted, such as deforestation, changes to weather, killing species of plant, changes in animals, which allow some plants to run rampant and others getting eaten to the point of endangerment or extinction. Plants are often used in our medicines, food, products like shampoos and conditioners, lotions. Without protecting plants, coffee, vanilla, chocolate, and many fruits are in danger of going extinct, as mentioned earlier. Whole ecosystems can change if one plant is lost. Just like my example of how wolves can change the entire ecosystem of Yellowstone in episode 2, one species can make a huge impact on an entire ecosystem. Bogs, swamps, and grasslands are also threatened. Oh, and in case anyone forgot, without plants we can't breathe, so, there's that too. Despite all the dangers and problems due to climate change, there is still hope for the future. There are many ways people can help against climate change and many actions that are currently being taken. So be aware of the dangers and know that it is good to have some amount of fear, but not too much, for there is hope. Let's go into the hope. The United Nations have taken actions against climate change through treaties that hold nations accountable for emission reductions and changes towards green energy. In 1997, the UN signed the Kyoto Protocol. From 2008 to 2012, countries were held to the standards of emission reduction it gave. It was revised, and a second commitment to it began in 2013, which ended last year in 2020. This led to some nations successfully reducing their emissions. While it had mixed results based on some nations' successes and others' failures, it was overall a step in the right direction. The 36 Kyoto countries, what they promised and how they're doing. Percent change achieved to 2005, percent change promised for 2008 through 2012. Looking at this chart, the nations to the left had increased or no change in emission rates, while the nations on the right had reduced emissions. Those closest to center just didn't reduce as much as they had planned. As you can see though, the majority did actually do a great job reducing their emissions. Concern for the planet and understanding of the dangers have become more obvious and well known around the world, which allowed the Paris Climate Agreement to come into place. Every nation on the planet, except for the United States, signed this treaty to help save the planet. Now, currently, beginning 2021 with new administration, the US has finally signed the Paris Climate Accord. For those who think that's wrong or somehow misunderstand it, the main goal of the Paris Climate Accord is to prevent the temperature of the planet from increasing another 2 degrees Celsius, a dangerous increase for the planet and all on it. It isn't about... I've heard some misconceptions about this. It's not about France. It's only called the Paris Climate Accord because it happened to be arranged and, talked out in Paris, in France, and maybe France was leading this negotiation a bit, but it is for the whole planet, and every country on the planet, every country has signed it. A benefit of this agreement is the financial aid provided to nations most impacted by climate change. While the US originally was not a part of this agreement, 24 states and Puerto Rico did sign up individually to follow the agreement's guidelines. It's basically half the country. So, as you could say, half the US signed initially and the other half did not. Nationally, we didn't, but as states and territory Puerto Rico, they did sign. As shown here, it is a map of the US with the states that signed the agreement, as well as Puerto Rico, which, by the way, a lot of people seem to not understand is a territory of the United States. Personally, I think they should become a state because I think the majority of Puerto Ricans would like to be a state. And also, our whole country is sort of founded on the idea of not liking having territories and, they don't have as many rights as a state. It's just, that's a whole topic for a whole other episode. But anyway, they are technically part of the US, and I don't think enough Americans know that. Okay, anyway, these states called themselves the Climate Alliance. Here are the actions they had already taken before 2021 began. They were all committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions to less than 2005 levels by 2025. Another action goal taken by these states is to convert more of their state's energy to green energy sources, as well as improve energy efficiency. Oh, which also sort of brings me to the whole recent Texas storm. A lot of people are blaming that on green energy, but it's actually old power generators not having pipes buried deep enough, which creates a freezing risk, which states like mine, I'm in Colorado, we're pretty winterized, we know that, we bury things further in the ground so they don't freeze. It was issues like that, simply not winterizing the systems, and it had very little to do with green energy. Anyway, there are many benefits to these actions, which I will mention a little later. Some states are trying to change policies to help increase the use of electric cars, low-emission vehicles, and charging stations. While EPA regulations under the Trump administration were being cut and chemicals that were previously banned were no longer banned, causing more pollution and more health concerns, states are holding tighter regulations and reducing the use of harmful air pollutants. So while on a national level we were doing really poorly when it comes to climate change or just people's health, some states were doing a really good job. States have also invested money into green energy and protections against potential damages due to climate change, such as investing to protect against floods or investing in research. Ways of tracking progress and changes with regards to climate change are also being developed. Specific ways for organizations and governments to take action against climate change are the development of more windmills to add more clean energy. And no, not as many birds die from windmills as people think, and some people have even invented ones that are motion detecting and can prevent it from hitting birds. Also, many windmills don't move fast enough to be of danger to birds. Also, solar panels and windmills can also be used in winter. I know some people seem to think they can't. They can. Also, they store energy, like a battery. You can charge a battery and still be used. Even if it's not a windy day, the windmills have still stored energy. They don't need to be constantly moving with wind. Anyway, just thought I'd clarify that a little bit. Solar panels can also be used in different ways. Some places have already created sidewalks and roads with solar panels. The benefits of using solar panels this way is that they absorb energy. They also can use lights to mark arrows and lines on roadways. This can be programmed in, which also means they won't fade due to use, as painted lines on roadways do. They can be programmed to be heated to prevent icy roads, making driving safe in winter. They are more resistant to forming of potholes, making it better for cars and faster to repair. While it is an expensive endeavor, no doubt about that, it also would create job opportunities. Solar panels are also used on roofs to help power homes. Another way to help with climate change regarding roadways is to paint them a lighter color. The asphalt is dark and absorbs lots of heat, adding to the greenhouse effect. Simply changing roads to be gray with black and yellow lines will greatly reduce heat absorption. In LA, they have already begun using what they call Cool Seal, which is a light gray sealant on the roads. It is also stronger than previous seals, so repairs are not needed as often. And LA began this because cities are often hotter than surrounding areas due to the roadways and pollutants that keep temperatures higher in city areas. This is called a heat island. Since the Cool Seal is gray and has a matte finish, it won't allow sunlight to distract drivers. It doesn't reflect in the same way as like snow does. A benefit of this versus solar panel roadways is that it is a lot cheaper to do. However, icy roads can still be an issue since you can't have it heated and it is a lighter color. This may simply mean that some areas may benefit more from using Cool Seal on their roads, and some places may benefit more from using solar panels or some other form. It just kind of depends what your weather is like, the cost of it, lots of other impacts. But at least taking some action could be helpful. Algae has been found to be better than trees at removing CO2 from the air. Algae used with AI bioreactors can remove 400 times more CO2 than a tree. While trees are important to reducing CO2 levels, it can take too many years to grow enough trees to fight climate change efficiently. Algae may be a solution to that. A benefit of using algae in this way is it will allow more time for companies to figure out how to transition the way they produce products. Companies do need to start moving in a greener direction. However, some companies can't just rapidly make that switch. Algae would give them a little more time. However, I would also point out scientists have been talking about climate change since the 1970s, so really companies have had time to realize they should have come up with a plan. Just judgment on my part for that one. I'm sorry, but I'm judging that. If you hadn't already come up with a plan to slowly transition, you gotta make faster moves now. You had the time to make slow transitions, you don't have that time anymore. I'm sorry, you don't have as much time. Algae might give you a little bit more time though. While it is best to move to cleaner production methods, that can be a tricky process to change the equipment, train employees, and can be costly. With how much CO2 algae can remove, it would allow a little bit more time to change how companies operate. On a different note, some algae has nutrients that could also help with the food crisis in the world, which is just another added benefit of farming algae. Eric Clarenbeek and Martije Droz have been finding ways to use algae in a way that would be used to replace plastic. We know plastic takes an insane amount of time to decompose, but algae could be a solution to this because it does not take thousands of years. The process would also help remove CO2 versus creating it like plastic production. A company named Bloom makes foam from algae, which are used in shoes, and some major shoe companies such as Adidas have already started to use this. The process of making the foam also helps return clean water to freshwater ecosystems. Another potential use of algae is as a replacement to gas and petroleum. More research is needed, but it has the potential to work, which could reduce pollution and may be helpful to the car industry for when electric cars are not as convenient. It's always good to have a few different potential solutions out there. Organizations aren't the only ones who can help with climate change. There are changes that every individual can make to help fight against climate change as well. There are companies that produce alternative products to use. Instead of using paper or plastic plates, which can be dangerous to heat up in a microwave because of some chemicals they release and are dangerous for the environment, you could use banana leaf plates. They were created in Peru by a company called Chua Plant and can be bought online. That company also makes bowls. A company, Verterra, makes palm leaf plates. The company Bear by Solo makes cups from sugarcane which can hold hot drinks versus using like styrofoam. And Wernerware makes bamboo plates. All these alternatives do not have the harmful chemicals used in other products and are more sustainable, while still being sturdy products. So you could always look into using any of those. For silverware, there are metal straws. Some are compressible and can be carried in a purse or a wallet. There's also transportable silverware, which is better than using single-service plastics. When COVID's not an issue, before it was an issue, you could take your own cups to certain places like Starbucks and they could fill it and you'd even get a discount versus using single-use plastics. Beyond the food industry, though, there are products that can be used to help the planet. Using bars of soap instead of soap in plastic bottles can help reduce plastic use. Like soap, there are some companies making bars of shampoo or bars of conditioner. I've tried some. I admit the ones I tried didn't really work very well with my hair, but honestly, everyone has different hair types, and if you can find one out there that works for you, it's a really good solution. And if not, try to find some bottles that can be recyclable, but really recycling isn't enough. But there are a surprising number of companies that do make bars of shampoo and bars of conditioner, so I obviously haven't tried them all. That should make it a little bit easier to find one that fits your needs. Also, as I said, recycling bottles can be helpful. Bamboo and hemp can be used to make paper products such as paper, tissue paper, paper towel, rope, or toilet paper. Bamboo products are not all equal. Some companies are very good quality and others are just not as good. However, the more people use them and buy them, due to competition and demand, they will continue to improve in their quality. Competition and demand. Economics. Anyway, the benefits of both hemp and bamboo is that they grow much faster than trees, making them far more sustainable, and both are able to produce products that work really well. There are also many eco-friendly cleaning products that are better for both the environment and the person using them. These are all tiny changes that can make a big difference in the fight against climate change, as well as help improve the health of those who use them. Understanding misconceptions around climate change can help people to focus on the real dangers and consequences of climate change. Try to remember there are solutions in the works, whether it's global, national, state, city, or individual level. If you want to do more, some organizations that you can donate to are 350.org, Environmental Defense Fund, the Sierra Club, Greenpeace, Union of Concerned Scientists, Earth Justice, the Solutions Project, Center for Climate or Energy Solutions, and the Nature Conservancy. You can also email your representatives to get them to focus on climate change action or help local organizations. You can change the products you use and suggest them to friends. You can also find ways to suggest cleaner energy ideas to businesses. Just remember to tell them the benefits and probably the economic benefits. Let's be honest, that tends to convince people more. Keep the truth of climate change clear in your mind and along with the risks. But remember, solutions are available, so keep hope. See you all next time for I don't know what topic, because I keep flitting back and forth as to what I want to do next. Anyway, see you next time. Subscribe, or like, or don't. Up to you, your choice, don't really mind. Bye, people.